Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. A few minutes later, Miko returned with another garment. Sam had Chris turn around, wrapped it around his waist, and fastened it. He immediately felt it getting tighter as Sam pulled on something, and the garment grew increasingly constricting. She asked him to lift his arms and take a deep breath. The moment he did, the garment tightened further, making it difficult for him to breathe. "What are you doing to me?" he asked, trying to catch his breath. "It's a waist cincher. It'll give you a more feminine waist," Sam explained as she tied the laces in a neat bow. "But I can hardly breathe," Chris protested. "A girl has to suffer to be beautiful." "You'll get used to it," Sam replied, turning him around and giving him a kiss. "Now, try on the skirt." He put the skirt back on, zipped it up with ease, and was surprised at how well it fit, hitting him about mid-thigh. He took the skirt off and said, "Okay, take the waist cincher off." No, I think you should wear it. It'll help you feel more like a girl," Sam grinned. Chris shook his head, pulling his pants back on. He had to use the last hole in his belt to hold his pants up, and they were still loose. Sam must have taken in his waist by at least 4 inches. It was going to take some getting used to. They walked around the shop a bit more. Sam found a straight grey skirt she liked and a pair of pink silk shorts to match the pink blouse. She compared the sizes and decided they were close enough that Chris didn't need to try them on. At the checkout, along with the blouses, skirts, and shorts, Sam handed the sales girl the tag from the waist cincher and said in English, "He'll wear that." The girl smiled knowingly at Chris. It was close to lunchtime, and the girls were getting hungry. They headed to a nearby restaurant. As Chris started to order his usual large meal, Sam and Miko giggled. Miko teased, "You'd better eat light. That waist cincher will make it hard to finish a big meal." Chris just shook his head and told Sam to order for him. After lunch, they went shoe shopping, so Sam had Chris go into the restroom and change into a pair of the thigh-high nylons they had bought. Chris had missed the feel of nylons, they were one of his favorites. After lunch, they set off to find a shoe store. Chris carried all the shopping bags, and his arms were getting tired. As they passed the train station, Sam suggested they rent a locker to store their purchases until they were done. They found the shoe store down a side street. Despite Chris's feet not being that large, the store had a great selection of larger sizes. Chris tried on a dozen pairs with the help of a cheerful salesgirl. In the end, they picked 3 pairs: brown leather slide-on sandals with 2.5-inch heels, black chunky 3-inch heels with ankle straps, and dark blue Mary Janes with ankle straps. Afterward, Chris asked Sam, "How much more?" "Getting tired? A girl has to learn to love shopping," she said, kissing him. "One more stop." They left the shoe store, headed down the side street, and took a left on the next one, with Miko leading the way as if she knew exactly where she was going. After another turn, they stopped in front of a wig shop. Miko said, "I've bought a couple of my club wigs here, they have a great selection." As they entered, they were greeted by a sales associate, this time a man. Sam explained what she was looking for, and the man examined Chris before selecting a few wigs from the shelves. Chris sat at a booth with mirrors on 3 sides while the man carefully placed a wig cap over his head. He then adjusted a long blonde wig on Chris, fussing with it for a few minutes. Chris modeled it for Sam and Miko, and the process repeated until he had tried on a dozen wigs. Sam loved 2 of them, a straight back wig with a flip just above the shoulders, and a dishwater blonde one with a nice wave and flip. She had the man cut and style both wigs to better suit Chris's face. It was Chris's first experience in a beauty shop. Both wigs were carefully placed on wig stands and packed into tall boxes. Shopping. The sales clerk rang up the total, and Chris couldn't help but notice how expensive the wigs were. "You can't be serious. These are way too expensive," he exclaimed. "Honey, I want the best for you," Sam replied. "Besides, Mom handed me the card this morning and said, 'Have fun.' And when she says that, She means it. I don't know how much you've spent, but I do know those wigs cost a fortune. Your dad is going to kill us. He won't know. Mom handles all the finances. She'll see the bills, and she won't question it. She knows Miko and I love shopping at high-end stores. After all, she's the one who taught us. But you don't even know if you'll like me when I'm dressed like this. I know, Sam said confidently. Okay, fine. You're going to do it anyway. Chris realized he was starting to see who was going to be the boss in their relationship. They finished up and it was already close to 3. If they hurried, they could catch the 3 o'clock train back home. They rushed to the station, with Chris once again carrying a mountain of packages. After retrieving their other bags from the locker, they just made it onto the train. This time, Chris was lucky enough to get a seat, with room for the bags next to him. He was exhausted and dozed off while the 2 girls chatted on the hour-long ride. Sam had called the driver on her cell phone, and he was waiting for them at the station. Back at the Matsushita home, the 3 of them carried the packages to Chris's bedroom and laid everything out on his bed. Chris couldn't believe how many beautiful things they had bought. Sam made space in one of the drawers for some of the items, and hung the rest in his closet. The wigs were placed on a shelf in the closet, carefully covered. When everything was put away, Sam said, "Honey, Miko has a present for you." Miko pulled a box from one of the bags and handed it to Chris very formally, saying, "A present for my new sister." It was a white box tied with pink ribbon. Chris accepted it with equal formality, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a beautifully painted wooden box with Japanese characters on it. When he opened the box, he found a complete makeup kit, everything a girl could need, from brushes to lipstick and eyeshadow. Chris bowed slightly and said, "Thank you very much, Miko. But you really shouldn't have." "Oh yes," Miko replied with a grin, "this will help you look even prettier than you already are. Thank you very much, Michelle." After dinner, as had become their custom, Chris and Sam sat in the garden and talked. As the sun began to set, Sam asked, "Will you dress for me tonight?" "Yes," Chris replied. Sam stood up, took Chris's hand, and they walked to the guest house, heading straight for Chris's bedroom. She curled up on the bed to watch, the first of many times to come. Chris walked over to the chest of drawers, picked out a white bra and panty set, and held it up to Sam for approval. She smiled and nodded. Chris undressed, leaving on the waist cincher and nylons. He started pulling on the panties, but Sam stopped him. "Put the garter belt on first, then the panties over that." He complied, attaching the nylons to the garter belt and pulling the panties up over both. He slipped on the bra straps, reached behind him, and fastened it. Sam smiled. "You've done this before." Chris grinned, then took a couple of pairs of nylons and stuffed them into the bra cups. He looked at Sam and said, "Well, not too bad. But we need to do something about that bulge in the panties." "Oh, that," Chris said. He turned his back to her, bent over, adjusted himself, then stood up, turned around, and asked, "Is that any better?" Sam was a bit surprised by what she saw, or rather, didn't see. Chris stood there with a completely smooth front. From the neck down, he now looked like a girl, with no trace of his manhood. Yes. Where did it go?" "It's called tucking. My 2 little friends are tucked inside, my penis is back between my legs, and the panties hold it all in place." "Interesting," Sam said, impressed. "So, what outfit do you want me to model? How about the white blouse and plaid skirt?" Chris went to the closet and returned with the blouse and skirt. He slipped the blouse on, buttoned it up, remembering to leave the top 2 buttons undone, then stepped into the skirt and zipped it up without any trouble. "Now, the blonde wig," Sam said, smiling. "Help me with this." "I've never worn one before," Chris said, eyeing the wig nervously. Sam stood up from the bed, went to the closet, and retrieved the blonde wig, placing it carefully on the dressing table. "Sit down," she instructed. Chris sat on the bench, and Sam placed a wig cap over his head, followed by the wig, adjusting it carefully and brushing it out. Looking at him in the mirror, She smiled at the transformation, and so did he. Now, let's do some makeup. I'm going to need help again. I've never done it before either, Chris admitted, remembering his earlier attempts at makeup, which had turned out terribly. He would have asked for her help anyway, enjoying the way she assisted him. Okay. Turn around so I can get some light. Sam set the painted wooden box on the dresser and took a good look at Chris's face. Do you mind if I work on your eyebrows a little? I guess not, but don't do too much. We'll take it slow with thinning and shaping them. No one will notice. You're really getting into this, aren't you? She said, as she began plucking a few stray hairs, working carefully around his eyebrows, the bridge of his nose, and the lower side of his brows. After a while, she seemed satisfied. Then, she moved on to the foundation, eyeshadow, eyebrow pencil, mascara, and lipstick. When she was finished, she stepped back and smiled. You're pretty. You're kidding, right? I probably still look like a guy in a skirt. No. Take a look. Chris turned to the mirror and was shocked. The reflection staring back at him was that of a blonde girl, not the prettiest girl, but still, not bad. He turned back to Sam and said, You did a good job. I had a good canvas to work with, she said, giving him a kiss. Now, put on those sandals, and let's see the whole outfit. Chris slipped on the sandals with 2.5-inch heels and carefully walked around the room, trying to move as feminine as possible. Sam giggled as she watched him. He twirled, almost losing his balance, and they both laughed. She walked around him, inspecting his look. You know, she said, not bad at all. In fact, you have really great legs. I only see a couple of things that need some work. You're a bit small up top for your build, and we need to add some hips and a butt. But that will come with time. Chris sat on the bed, looking at Sam. Finally, he said, You've really gotten into this, haven't you? Yes, she replied without hesitation. Why? He asked, genuinely curious. You've got a boyfriend who likes to wear girls' clothes. Most girls would freak out, but you've really embraced it. You wanted to see me dressed, so you and your sister took me shopping and bought me all these clothes, wigs, and shoes. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. You don't like it? Sam asked, her voice trembling slightly as she blinked back tears. I didn't say that. I love everything you've done. I just want to know why. Sam sat down next to him, took his hands in hers, and looked directly into his eyes. When you told me on the plane that you were a crossdresser, it really turned me on. I don't know why, but I wanted to jump you right then and there. I talked to Miko about my feelings, and she thought that when you told me, it triggered something in my psyche that had been dormant. You've shown me that you can be everything I need in a man, and you also have this softer, feminine side that I adore. I wanted to help you nurture it, to let that side of you grow. But now, I'm afraid I've gone too far, too fast, and ruined things between us. Tears started to well up in her eyes. Chris wrapped his arms around her, stroked her hair, and whispered, Don't cry. You haven't ruined anything. In fact, I'm so happy that you've accepted my feminine side. I haven't been able to dress as much as I wanted since starting college, and I really need this. But I also needed to understand why you felt this way. Most girls would have run away screaming, but you, he paused, smiling. I love you so much. Sam pulled back slightly, looked into his eyes, and kissed him deeply. She pushed him gently onto the bed, kissing him like there was no tomorrow. As she rolled onto her back, Chris looked down at her, wiping away the remnants of her tears. She laughed softly, saying, You know, your makeup is a mess. He smiled and replied, It's your fault. And you're going to have to teach me how to fix it. Then I can fix yours too, because it's also a mess. He paused. Can I ask you one more thing that's been on my mind? Maybe. I guess. If you had known about my cross-dressing, say, right after we met in high school, would you still feel the same way about me now? Chris asked. Sam hesitated, then said, I really don't know. All I can tell you is that the first day I met you, when I touched your hand, I knew there was something special between us. I wasn't sure what it was, but it took me a while to figure out that it was love. Real love. But once I realized that, I knew for sure you were the one, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything, including that Kathy, come between us. Kathy? Kathy Ryder? Chris asked, surprised. Yes. You didn't know? No. What happened? Right after the party the Gordons threw for me, Kathy told me to stay away from you. She said you were hers and that I couldn't have you. We had a huge fight. Luckily Jackie was there to physically separate us. At the time, I wasn't sure about us, but I wasn't going to let anyone tell me who I could or couldn't be with. You two fought over me, Chris said, laughing. Boy, I'm so glad you won that one. Kathy and I were never more than friends, at least not in my eyes. There was no doubt in my mind who was going to win that fight. You're amazing. You know, Sam said, I can't call you Chris when you're dressed like this. Yeah, that would be strange. Do you have a feminine name you like? She asked. No. I never thought about it. Miko did. Miko? Yes, in fact, it's what's written on top of the makeup box. At least, it's as close as it can be in Japanese characters. And what's that name? Michelle. Michelle? Yes, Michelle. I kind of like that. Michelle. It sounds good. I like it too. The rest of the evening was spent like any couple deeply in love, just enjoying each other's company in their own world. The next morning, being Saturday, they had a late breakfast. Chris was up early, as was Mrs. Matsushita. They sat together, sipping tea and chatting while waiting for the others. Eventually, Mrs. Matsushita asked Chris point-blank, "Young man, do you love my daughter?" Without hesitation, Chris replied, "Yes, very much. She's my oldest daughter, and she means the world to me." "Yes, she means the world to me too. Her father and I have sensed something between the two of you ever since she was in America the first time. When she came back, she was deeply depressed. It took us a long time to figure out what was wrong. And when we found out it was a boy, we tried hard to help her move on. But we soon realized there was more to it. She had confided in Miko about her feelings, and we were finally able to get the whole story. So we helped her accelerate her studies and planned for her to go to college in America. That was the only way we could help her out of her depression. When she learned she'd be going back to the States, she snapped right out of it. And when we met you 2 weeks ago, we knew she had made a very wise choice. All I ask of you is to respect her and never hurt her. Mrs. Matsushita, the last thing I would ever do is hurt Hannah." Mrs. Matsushita smiled at him and nodded in agreement. Soon after, Hannah and Mr. Matsushita joined them for breakfast. The conversation shifted to Chris's past 2 weeks in Japan. Mr. Matsushita spoke up. "Chris, you've mentioned wanting to take a rail trip to see as much of the country as possible. So, I've made arrangements for the two of you to fly to Sapporo tomorrow, pick up the train there on Monday, and be back here by Friday. I've also arranged for you to stop overnight in 4 different cities to explore the sights, learn about Japanese history, and experience the culture. You can make additional stops along the way if you wish." He handed 2 packets to Hannah and Chris. They both exchanged glances, then said almost in unison, "The two of us?" Mrs. Matsushita confirmed with a smile, "Yes. The two of you. First, we can't just let Chris wander around Japan on his own. Second, Hannah hasn't seen these parts of Japan either. And third, Chris only has 2 weeks left here, so we thought it would be a nice way for you two to spend some time alone together. This is our gift to you. After the talk Chris and I had this morning, I know it's the right thing. Mr. and Mrs. Matsushita, you've already done so much for me. And we want to do this for both of you. In the 2 weeks you've been here, we've gotten to know you, and we like you very much. We believe you're good for Hannah." Hannah squeezed Chris's hand and said, "Thank you so much, Mom and Dad. We really appreciate this, and we'll really enjoy it." Later, Chris and Hannah were looking through the travel packets and noticed that each hotel reservation only had 1 room booked, all first-class hotels. They couldn't help but wonder if her parents knew more than they were letting on. The week of travel. On Sunday, Chris and Hannah flew to Sapporo, spent the day exploring the city, and stayed at the Sheraton Sapporo that night. The next morning, they boarded a train heading south. Though they only saw a small part of Japan, each day allowed them to learn more about one another. Chris even participated in his first Shinto ritual at one of the country's important shrines. That evening, after dinner, Hannah opened a third suitcase they had brought along. They had packed some of Michelle's clothes just in case Chris wanted to dress up. But Hannah had other plans. She turned to him and asked, "Want to go out as Michelle?" "I couldn't." "Yes, you could. What if someone recognizes me? First, you're passable. I wouldn't embarrass you. If I didn't think you could pass, I wouldn't even suggest it. Second, we're in a strange city, and no one knows you. I thought we could just go for a short walk." "Okay, I guess. If you think I can really pull it off." She just smiled knowingly. Chris put on a red bra, matching panties, and tucked his equipment away. He added the waist cincher, pantyhose, and used 2 pairs of nylons to stuff the bra. Hannah still marveled at how much Chris's body looked like a girl's. She helped with his makeup and the black wig. She was getting turned on, realizing there was a guy standing in front of her looking like a girl. She quickly handed him a pink blouse and matching shorts. Chris slipped them on, looked in the mirror, and there she was again, but this time with black hair. Maybe even looking a little better than before. He slipped on the sandals, and Hannah handed him a small purse with a shoulder strap. They were ready. Hannah rushed him out of the hotel room for 2 reasons. She didn't want him to have second thoughts, and if they didn't leave soon, they wouldn't make it out. She was incredibly turned on by looking at Michelle. They walked down the hall to the elevators, rode down to the lobby without encountering anyone, and as they walked through the lobby, Chris felt like everyone was staring at him. But they weren't looking at him, they were looking at 2 pretty girls. The desk clerks smiled and bowed as they passed. The doorman did the same. As they stepped outside, Hannah whispered, "That wasn't so bad, was it? My knees were like rubber, and I thought everyone was looking at me. I almost ran back to the room." "Honey, it's fine. They were looking at the 2 of us, 2 pretty girls out for a walk." As they strolled through the main shopping area, Michelle began to feel more confident with each step. They window shopped and admired the many beautiful things. Then they came across a small tea shop, and Hannah wanted to stop for tea. Michelle hesitated but followed Hannah inside. They sat down at a table, and Michelle tried to be as ladylike as possible while sitting. The server greeted them in Japanese, and Hannah explained that her friend knew little Japanese. The server switched to English, and the girls ordered tea and cake. They chatted while they sipped their drinks. After Hannah paid, she excused herself to use the restroom. Michelle started to follow but hesitated at the door. Hannah whispered, "Come on. Ladies out together, go to the restroom together." "I can't go in there." "Yes, you can. Come on." They walked into the restroom together. There was no one else there. Hannah whispered, "If you need to go, remember to sit." Michelle, needing to go, entered a stall. When she came out, Hannah was at the counter fixing her makeup. Michelle washed her hands and was about to leave when Hannah said, "You'd better freshen up your makeup. You'll find lipstick in your purse." Michelle opened the purse and found a variety of items: lipstick, a compact, a small bottle of perfume, her passport, and a sanitary napkin. She pulled out the napkin, looking puzzled. Hannah smiled and said, "A girl is always prepared." Michelle smiled, returned the napkin, and took out the lipstick to freshen up. As they left the tea shop, the server bowed and thanked them. They continued down the street, window shopping some more. They turned down a side street and came upon a little lingerie shop. Hannah, her eye caught by something in the window, grabbed Michelle's hand and pulled him inside. They were greeted by a middle-aged woman, who appeared to be the owner. Hannah conversed with her for a while. The woman studied Michelle closely, then looked back at Hannah and smiled before heading to the back room. Michelle asked, What was that all about? Michelle needs something more, and this store has what I've been looking for. What's that? You'll see. The woman returned carrying 4 boxes and set them on the counter. Hannah and the woman talked quickly, too fast for Michelle to follow. Hannah then grabbed the boxes and walked toward a curtained area. Come on, Michelle, dear. Michelle followed her into the curtained-off space. Hannah set the boxes down and kissed him gently. The woman entered behind them. Michelle asked, "What's going on?" "Well, I thought stuffing your bra with nylons wasn't the best solution. While we were looking in the window, I noticed they carried mastectomy supplies. So, I asked if they ever fit men for chest forms. She told me they have a large clientele of men. I explained that I'd like to fit you for a pair. At first, she wasn't sure if you were a man or not, but I assured her that you were. She said it was hard to tell. See, I told you, you're passable. The week of travel. So, what's in the boxes? And why is she here?" Chris asked, looking at the mysterious boxes. "Chest forms. To fit you," Hannah replied. "You're kidding." "No, I don't joke about these things." "I should have guessed," Chris said, laughing. "Take off your blouse, and let's see what size looks best." Chris removed his blouse and pulled the nylons out of his bra. The woman opened 2 of the boxes, pulled out one of the forms, and handed it to Chris. He looked at it, then at Hannah, and said, "These look too real." "They're supposed to," Hannah replied. "In fact, they can be attached, so you can go braless. Go ahead, that one goes on the right side, with the longer part towards your arm." Chris placed the form in the cup, feeling it cool against his skin. He then placed the other one in, and the woman adjusted them for a moment before stepping back to take a look. She shook her head and spoke to Hannah. Hannah relayed the woman's message. "She says it's no good. You need bigger ones. Take those out, and put these in." Chris complied, and after a little more adjusting, the woman smiled and said, "These look good." Hannah said, "Put your blouse back on and take a look." Chris slipped his blouse on again and gazed at his reflection. It looked as if he had real breasts, and when he moved, they felt lifelike. "Well, what do you think?" Hannah asked. "They feel real. And I really like the way they feel and move." "Good. Put the nylons in your purse and grab the boxes," Hannah said, walking out of the curtained area with the woman. Chris quickly placed the nylons in his purse, grabbed the boxes, and followed them into the store. Hannah said something to the woman and handed her a charge card. Chris asked, "What did you tell her?" "Just that you loved them and would be wearing them. She said they looked very natural, and much better than the nylons." "Your mom's going to be mad." "No, remember when she hands me the card, she always says, 'Have fun.'" "So, I do." The woman rang up the sale, smiled, and bid them farewell. They stepped back onto the street. As they walked, Chris commented, "These really do feel better. They move with me, and have some weight to them." "I thought you'd like them," Hannah said. They walked for another half hour before heading back to the hotel. This time, they walked through the lobby without incident. Once back in their room, the 2 of them ended up in a long embrace. It was late, so they decided to turn in. As Chris began undressing, Hannah approached from behind, saying, "Let me help." She reached around him, unbuttoned his blouse, and let it fall to the floor. She kissed his neck and gently touched his new chest forms. Even though they were artificial, they felt good. The 2 girls eventually fell into bed, though it was much later before they actually fell asleep. For the next 3 nights, their routine was almost the same. After dinner, Michelle would change, Hannah would help improve her look, and they would walk around the city. On the last night, things took a turn. They were at a small indoor mall when 2 men approached and started hitting on them. It took Hannah some time to get rid of them, finally telling them they were lesbians. The incident shook Michelle up, and it took Hannah a while to calm her down enough to walk back to the hotel, 5 blocks away. Once inside their hotel room, Chris pulled off the wig and threw it on the floor. "I can't do it. I just can't do it," he said, sitting on the bed, his eyes brimming with tears. I'm sorry. I'm not a crybaby, but that really upset me. I know, Hannah said softly, sitting beside him. It was scary. You just have to stand up to people like that. What did you finally tell them? Chris asked. That we were lesbian lovers and had no interest in guys. You didn't? Yes, I did. They both laughed a little. You know, maybe you're right. We are lesbian lovers, Chris joked. Look at me, I look more like a girl than a guy. Are you complaining? I'm not, Hannah teased. No complaints here. But I just don't want to go through that again. Hannah smiled. I have an idea. I'll be right back. She grabbed her purse and was out the door before Chris could say anything. While she was gone, he cleaned up, refreshed his makeup, something he would usually remove, and waited. About 15 minutes later, Hannah returned with a small package. She knelt down beside Chris, opened a ring box with what appeared to be an engagement ring inside, and asked, "Will you marry me?" The week of travel. On Sunday, Chris and Hannah flew to Sapporo, spent the day exploring the city, and stayed at the Sheraton Sapporo that night. The next morning, they boarded a train heading south. They saw only a small portion of the country, but every day they learned more about each other. Chris even took part in his first Shinto ritual at one of Japan's important shrines. That evening, after dinner, Hannah opened a third suitcase they had brought along. It contained some of Michelle's clothes, just in case Chris wanted to dress. But Hannah had other plans. She turned to him and asked, "Want to go out as Michelle?" I couldn't. Yes, you could. What if someone notices? First, you're passable. I wouldn't embarrass you. If I didn't think you could pass, I wouldn't even suggest it. Second, we're in a strange city, and no one knows you. I thought we could just go for a walk. Okay, I guess. If you think I can really pull it off. She smiled and didn't need to say anything more. Chris put on a red bra, matching panties, and tucked his equipment away. He added the waist cincher, pantyhose, and stuffed the bra with 2 pairs of nylons. Hannah couldn't help but admire how much Chris's body resembled a girl's. She helped with his makeup and the black wig, getting turned on again by the sight of a guy looking like a girl. She quickly handed him a pink blouse and matching shorts. He slipped them on, looked in the mirror, and saw that girl again, but this time with black hair. Maybe even a little better looking. He slipped on the sandals, and Hannah handed him a small purse with a shoulder strap. They were ready. Hannah rushed him out of the hotel room for 2 reasons. She didn't want him to have second thoughts, and if they didn't leave soon, they wouldn't make it. She was incredibly turned on by looking at Michelle. They walked down the hall to the elevators, rode down to the lobby, and walked through the lobby without encountering anyone. Chris felt like everyone was staring at him, but they weren't, they were admiring 2 pretty girls. The desk clerk smiled and bowed as they passed. The doorman did the same. As they stepped outside, Hannah whispered, "That wasn't so bad, was it? My knees were like rubber, and I thought everyone was staring at me. I almost ran back to the room." "Honey, it's fine. They were looking at the 2 of us, 2 pretty girls out for a walk." As they walked down the main shopping area, Michelle felt more confident with each step. They window shopped and admired many beautiful things. They then came across a small tea shop, and Hannah wanted to stop for a cup of tea. Michelle hesitated but followed Hannah inside. They sat at a table, and Michelle tried to sit as ladylike as possible. The server greeted them in Japanese, and Hannah explained that her friend didn't speak much Japanese. The server then greeted them in English. They ordered tea and cake, enjoying small talk. After Hannah paid, she excused herself to use the restroom. Michelle started to follow but hesitated at the door. Hannah whispered, "Come on. Ladies out together, go to the restroom together." "I can't go in there." "Yes, you can. Come on." They walked into the restroom together. There was no one else in there. Hannah whispered, "If you need to go, remember to sit." Michelle, needing to go, entered a stall. When she came out, Hannah was at the counter fixing her makeup. Michelle washed her hands and was about to leave when Hannah said, "You'd better freshen up your makeup. You'll find lipstick in your purse." Michelle opened the purse and found a few items: lipstick, a compact, a small bottle of perfume, her passport, and a sanitary napkin. She pulled out the napkin, confused. Hannah smiled and said, "A girl is always prepared." Michelle smiled back, returned the napkin, and took out the lipstick to freshen up. As they left the tea shop, the server bowed and thanked them. They continued walking, window shopping through the district. They turned down a side street and found a small lingerie shop. Hannah grabbed Michelle's hand and pulled him inside. The shop owner, a middle-aged woman, greeted them. Hannah spoke with her for a while. The woman studied Michelle closely, looked at Hannah, and smiled before heading to the back room. Michelle asked, "What was that about?" "Michelle needs something more, and this store has what I've been looking for." "What's that?" "You'll see." The woman returned with 4 boxes and set them on the counter. Hannah and the woman spoke rapidly, too fast for Michelle to follow. Hannah grabbed the boxes and walked towards a curtained-off area. "Come on, Michelle, dear." Michelle followed her into the area. Hannah set the boxes down on a shelf, kissed Michelle gently, and the woman followed them in. Michelle asked, "What's going on?" "Well, I thought stuffing your bra with nylons wasn't the best solution. While we were window shopping, I noticed they carried mastectomy supplies. So I asked if they ever fit men for chest forms. She told me they had a large clientele of men. I told her I wanted to fit you for a pair. At first, she wasn't sure if you were a man, but I assured her that you were. She said it was hard to tell. See, I told you, you're passable."